Hello and welcome to The Quest on Rajya Sabha TV. I'm Rakhee Bakshee. This show gives you a deep insight into the life, career and vision of a very leading personality. And the leading personality this time is a reputed interior designer. She's also a restoration expert. And I must also tell you, she's the only Padam Shri awardee who has got this award in the field of interior designing. And we are proud today to have Mrs. Sunita Kohli. Welcome to the show, Ms. Kohli.
Thank you.
We should actually start by asking the whole background and origin of Ms. Kohli, who is today, of course, such a reputed interior designer, and you're a research-based interior designer. In fact, somebody who has brought a lot of historical aspect to the sense of design as to what you do. Let's go to the early days as to how it all started and what really inspired you to take up this field, which you are so good at.
I think, the beginnings, like with every other career and with every other person, the seeds of it lie in one's childhood. I grew up in a very laid-back atmosphere in Lucknow, where I grew up. I was born in Lahore. And I grew up with parents who were simple, but laid great stress on education and reading and looking at the finer things of life. And in those days, it used to be looking at beautiful glass lamps, because Lucknow is part of the Talukdari belt that stretches from Lucknow to Calcutta, as you know. So one used to go every weekend rummaging in I guess today one would call them kabadi shops, and we used to call them antique shops. But
how interesting the connection actually, because you're somebody who's an MA in English literature, somebody, as you were saying, studied hard, let's say at the school level and then of course at the college level, and somebody who studied so meticulously, and now how this whole sense of design come in between?
Firstly, I don't think I could have been a designer had I not read literature, because it is literature that introduced one first to the history of English furniture, which is what I started off with. Making furniture, first kind of looking at old furniture which one used to find in places like Mussoorie and Dehradun and Rajasthan and Lucknow.
So specialized in period furniture?
That time it was classical furniture, but classical English furniture of the 19th century, and you could find original pieces then. Of course, now they're not available at all. So then started a small business of reproducing those extremely faithfully. And then a furniture business started. But, together with that started also, I started designing, because I'm like the old cabinet makers of the 18th century in England. People used to make furniture, also used to decorate and design homes. So that's how it all began. And it was unplanned. In fact, the years that I was growing up, nobody even knew there was a profession known as interior design.
Exactly.
Because us waqt mein to kuch hota hi nahi tha. And
so did you suffer that kind of attitude which came about from around as to what you did was excelling in a field which had a lot of aesthetic value to it, but the perception was, let's say, a little different. So you had to actually work harder on things to, let's say, prove that what you were doing
I think we were more creative, because there were not so many things available. The world India had not opened up. So we were more creative. I was fortunate that I got one assignment to do, and it's only on the excellence of that assignment do you get more work. So one hotel led to another hotel, led to another hotel.
Since you're referring, I'm reminded of Egypt, where you've done excellent work in terms of designing those sailing boat hotels, as they're called. Will you explain
Egypt was a real experience. The first hotel I did there was many, many years ago, in the early 80s, in a town which is called El Arish, which is on the north coast of the Sinai on the Mediterranean. And in fact, it's a place that has existed from biblical times. So I designed the first hotel there. Then
So that was a challenge, a sense of history that you had to kind of.
But I'm research based, so it became. And then when they found that it reflected their culture, their milieu, their locale, that is what led to then other hotels. So I've done several, all for the Oberoi Hotel, and then 3 hotel boats also, which are for the Oberoi.
And you brought that very much experience into the kind of designing you've been doing for palaces and hotels also, which today want a lot of value and aesthetic sense to what their hotels would offer.
Yes, because the only fact was that I was an Indian who was designing. But everything that has to do with those hotels is totally and completely Egyptian. But that is the way I like to work. I mean, my work in Bhutan, which I've done.
Exactly. Bhutan is excellent. I mean, you've done the, the assembly building there, and also for the SARC Summit building that you worked on. How was that whole experience like?
It was amazing because I think Bhutan is the last Shangri-La. It is such a beautiful country with such beautiful people. So I felt, I mean, I'm deeply honored that I have been offered these projects to do. And I had done it in the late 80s. And then when SARC happened, they called us again. That is my architect, my daughter who's an architect, Kohelika. So both of us then went and did very intense and extensive work.
How satisfying was that in terms of, as you're saying, the whole culture again, the people there, and this whole responsibility of doing it, for the democratic aspect, let's say, of a country.
Yes, it's always, out of every project, it becomes such a learning project because Bhutan is a project which is, as you know, it's a Buddhist country. So there was all that research into that Buddhism, which is not the same as what exists in Tibet. So, and then looking at their crafts and their art forms and then incorporating them into the assembly building. So it was deeply satisfying. But I have to tell you that, you do
a lot of public buildings also in terms of restoration or designing them. So how is that experience of doing buildings which are in the public sphere?
When one is restoring, it's a totally different experience to when one is, say, designing a hotel. Because when you design a hotel, then you're conceptualizing. When you're restoring, then what you have to do is follow the vision of the original architect and hope that in a year or two, nobody even knows that there was the intervention of another professional designer stroke interior architectural restorer. So therein lies the challenge.
Okay, a lot of challenges that you actually worked on, Ms. Sunita Kohli. We are talking right now to Mrs. Sunita Kohli in the quest that you're watching right now. We are heading for a very short break, but don't go away. We're coming back shortly. You're watching The Quest on Rajya Sabha television, and we are talking to Mrs. Sunita Kohli, and we've been talking about her great experience in designing, restoring public buildings, and also her experience in giving guidance to many countries actually offshore. And we'll come to that actually. Somebody, a designer who has contributed so much to the global arena also. You've been invited to National Buildings Museum in Washington, D.C. The only designer, we must say. Wasn't it such a proud moment for all of us? How was the experience?
The experience was wonderful. I felt very proud to have been invited there because straight after me was the great Daniel Libeskind. So of course that made me terribly nervous. But it's a wonderful museum. And they always have a great audience. So even though the lecture, which was on Sir Edwin Lutyens and the planning of New Delhi, and it was an hour long, I finished in exactly an hour because I'm very disciplined like that. But then they had half an hour of question answers of everything that I wanted to put in but had to delete. So that got put in. So that was a wonderful experience.
Somebody who's actually known as a Lutyens expert, ma'am. You've done a lot of work in that area, which is such a area of heritage and pride in Delhi also. So you've done, let's say, Parliament building also. You are kind of giving some guidance, whether it's Rashtrapati Bhavan or whether even the PMO office and certain section there. So how is this whole experience and to be known as somebody who knows the Lutyens design so well and understands
it? Well, I feel in a sense very privileged and that I've had the opportunity of probably being the the designer, the restorer who has worked on the maximum number of Lachins' public buildings in Delhi. Of course, I took it on as doing a PhD on Lachins, so nothing can happen without research. So I privately researched at because all the drawings are archived at the Royal Institute of British Architects. So, but this was many, many years ago, because I first did work in 1982 and then extensive restoration in 1986. And then I've been involved again and also presently
Delhi,
involved.
I guess, attracts you in terms of design aspect, and that's why Humayun's tomb also, we saw that your restoration experience came quite handy there.
No, there wasn't anything that I didn't personally restore, but we had set ourselves up to celebrate India's 50th anniversary. Okay. We had set ourselves up as a small trust, and one of the projects that we undertook then was the restoration of the gardens of Humayun's tomb. Okay. So we acted in a catalyst element of putting the archaeological survey together with the Aga Khan Foundation. And look how wonderful it is, because yesterday there was this
we were
opening.
Just talking
yes,
when it all happened. So Delhi as a place of heritage, how would you look at it?
I think it's a great city. I mean, we are so fortunate that we live in probably one of the oldest capital cities in the world. And also, you know, Delhi is a garden city, and you know, where else can you find buildings that from at least 1,000 years extant that you can look at, that in fact Lachins used many of these buildings like the Purana Killa and the Jama Masjid as focal points when he planned the road systems of Delhi using the hexagonal pattern. Yeah.
Okay, and another great thing that we learn about you is that you know, Museum of Women in the Arts. That is something that is also you know, part of your personality, and where you've done a lot of work.
Well, the whole that journey began because I was invited to be on the advisory committee of the National Advisory Committee of the National Museum of Women in the Arts in Washington, D.C. Okay. And from there, the chairperson said, why don't we start a branch in India? But I thought, you know, India is such a large country, we can't have a branch. So we started an independent Museum of Women in the Arts in India. We are not a brick and mortar museum. We are, in the words of Andre Malraux, we are a museum without walls. So wherever we have say a Malvika Sarukai dancing like she danced in our courtyard. So for that period of time, that space becomes museum space. So,
but I hope idea. What a sense of freedom and creativity.
Yes, and also we hope that we are working towards becoming a virtual museum, because I think that is the way forward.
I'm really amazed to look at many roles that you play, Sunita ji, and one of the roles that you play is your involvement with social work and NGOs that you're part of or heading. One is Umang, of course, for the street children, and you also work for the women. Save a Mother is another platform. So,
well, Umang was the first idea of its kind in Delhi. And I was among one of a few group of women who started this thing. But so it served a purpose at a particular point in time, and now it is defunct. But Save a Mother is really the brainchild of a very brilliant doctor from Chicago, Dr. Shiban Ganju, and who has chosen to give back to his country. So he is he started Save a Mother, and I have the honor of being the chairperson of the board of trustees. So we are his support team. But what he has done is already in 1,200 districts, Sam is working. And by just spending 7,000 rupees per village per year, we have managed to bring down the mortality rates of young women and children by 91%. So, and now we are getting ourselves externally validated, because it's one thing for ourselves to say that, look, this is what we've done in this small amount of money. But now we need external validation.
So somebody who's trying to mix two things, let's say social work, design, in fact, so many other things that we'll be talking to you about after this break that we'll be taking shortly. How actually you mix all these different passions into one? Your role as somebody who's interested in social work, your interest in literature, your interest in design, and of course we'll be talking further your interest in writing actually.
I'm just a woman. This is what women do.
What do women do to excel actually?
No,
What's the secret?
We just play many multi roles, and I think ये औरतों की खासियत है. You know,
also because you never planned all this, and you've not really got yourself a very very technically, so to say, education in terms of designing that you do. So that's what amazes actually.
Well, once my designing career began, because I'm research based, and you can't excel in anything unless you're passionate about it.
So passion drives you.
Passion drives me, and study, research, traveling, so that you're constantly educating yourself. You're constantly educating yourself.
That's the
because
word.
I think education and hard work are the two keys to lead to a quest,
Oh, what a beautiful line to actually take this break on, that education and hard work, that's what Mrs. Kohli believes in, should lead to success at any point of time. We are watching The Quest right now. We're heading for another very short break, but don't go away. Keep watching this very interesting edition of The Quest. So you're watching The Quest, and we are in conversation right now with Mrs. Sunita Kohli. Let's look at you as an author and your interest in books and the world of books, already ranging from, again, to painting, to cuisine, to now children's book. I mean, Tanjore paintings, I mean, the whole work on that, of course, is on. Would you like to talk about more as to what all are you putting your hands on?
These have been there for a few years now. It's not something new. I've always written many essays and chapters which have appeared in several books over the years. And of course, because I give lectures and things like that, that's also another form of writing. So the natural corollary to all this was being asked and requested to write. But so far, if no complete book by me has come out, but I think very shortly 4 will be coming out.
And what are they all about? One we hear and understand is a very interesting work related to children, and that's where your family comes in, your grandchildren.
Yes, I think the first one that will come out, hopefully by, I think the date that the publishers are setting is early April, will be a children's book on Delhi's architecture. Beautiful. And this book is illustrated by my 2 grandchildren, Anadia and Zoravar. And unfortunately for them, they did the 67 illustrations 3 years ago. Then it lay on my desk. I couldn't do the text. But now I'm working on it, and very shortly this will come out. Then there's another book on Awadhi cuisine from the Jahangirabad. From the Jahangirabad kitchens, because this is to keep alive the way we grew up. And
so home is where the heart is, or heart is where the home is?
Both.
Also, another interesting thing about you is that you go abroad, and a lot of these, institutes who are interested again in promoting education and literature all across, invite you for lectures. Actually, so you're part of think tank, in many countries that we hear about.
I've been fortunate. So whilst my daughter was studying in New York and our son was studying in San Francisco and then later in England, I would take up assignments, frankly, talking assignments. As when I got invited, I would take them, because that also gave me an opportunity to spend time with my children. But now, of course, I take them up. The children factor is not there, and I'm fortunate, like next month I go to Scotland, and I'm doing 3 lectures, one of which is in the University of Edinburgh, and another one is in the Glasgow School of Art, and another one is in one of the grandest of British homes. So I guess one is fortunate, and people hear you somewhere and they like what you have said and they feel it's adding to their educational bank, then that's how it goes, and you get invited over and over
all
again.
these good things are spreading across. But looking again at your experience, how would you really feel satisfied? I mean, since you do so many things and all in varied roles, for example, that you do such important buildings and people keep asking you, of course, about their doing, whether your intervention or interest in Rashtrapati Bhavan to Parliament and all these very important buildings, to buildings again which you have to work on aesthetically. So what really interests you?
Firstly, I know Rashtrapati Bhavan gets mentioned all the time because it's India. Let me tell you, in Egypt, they couldn't care less. They're only interested in which hotel I've done and how it's finished. But I'm happy to do a studio apartment. I'm happy to do a fort, like I did for Mr. Oberoi, Naila Fort. So it's not the scale of a project that matters, but it's really what the project is and who the client is. That is what interests me. Yes, of course, Rashtrapati Bhavan interests me, and I'm deeply honored because it is part of our heritage, and so one feels that one is doing something for our own country.
Exactly.
So that I have.
Since you mentioned also this Nella Fort experience, how would you look at this whole frame of how heritage and architecture or restoration is being looked at in India? And where would you feel that there should be more, let's say, sensibility or sensitivity both to be exhibited by
there
people
is
like you?
much greater awareness now than there was, because in earlier years, I think post-independence, there were such strong influences from by Western architects because of Chandigarh having been built and Louis Kahn's work in Ahmedabad. So that kind of that influenced a generation or two generations. But now the world is much smaller. Young architects are receiving excellent educations, and then they are more conscious of our own heritage, because in a country like ours, it would be a shame not to be rooted in our own culture, however contemporary the building might be or however contemporary the interior might be. But I think this is happening more and more, and this is a very happy thing that one is looking at.
Also because maybe you get to meet people who are more conscious, as you're rightly saying, about their surroundings. So, for example, environmental concerns or all other concerns that people are now looking at when they're building houses.
Looking at, expressing, supporting, So I think these are all very positive things that are happening. And there is another younger lot which is much more educated, much more sentient, much more aware. So I think these things are, and I give young people, because we are a very intelligent country, and in 10 years' time, I think things will be vastly improved also.
We have to look at your family, of course, which I'm sure as a woman, as a leading woman, you must be thankful.
Please don't use the word leading. I mean, as a woman.
Okay. So how do you look at your own children and grandchildren? Your daughter, Kohelika, for example, is doing very well. But how do you look at this whole family that has been?
Well, I think family is the core of one's being as a woman, and I'm sure this is true of all women. Why should I just be singled out for this? So we have 3 children, and one is a homemaker, even though she was the first person who was qualified as an instructor from the British Horse Society, and she became a national champion when she was aged 11. Then we have 3 grandchildren. I have a son who's in a related field, and then I have a daughter, Kohelika, who's an architect, and she's the one who works with me.
Okay. So what is the path ahead? What is your dream now? How do you want to go ahead in your life and career now?
I don't want to have what the Chinese curse says, an interesting life, because
Very interesting, actually.
yeah,
Which is
that, you know, one wants to be.
beset with challenges.
No, challenges one should have, but there has to be harmony and peace, and I think I've been fortunate. I've had a very rich life. I've met some amazing people. I've been to some amazing places. And देखिए दुख सुख तो सबकी ज़िंदगी में आते रहते हैं और चलते रहते हैं. But the end of the day, it's been a good life with
Everybody happy around you.
contained. Contained. I mean, you know.
Okay.
So
It shows actually in the personality that you have, and Ms. Sunita Kohli, thanks a lot, and all the
Thank
very
you.
best wishes for
Thank
whatever
you.
you do
Thank you.
next. And that was Mrs. Sunita Kohli for you in conversation with us in The Quest. Hope you liked this edition of The Quest this time. Thank you. Namaskar. Bye-bye.